We're going to start with the first elephant in the room, and it's this Silicon Valley Bank. And what in the world is going on? And Lee, I mean, I'm looking at this, and the concern is the domino effect. We're starting to get, I have reports here on my laptop about all different banks that are in trouble. I was watching Dan from I allegedly last night listed, I think, 27 different banks as of yesterday that the feds are saying, hey, this is a problem. Now, I'm looking at things. I've got concerns for all kinds of reasons, but let me just throw it over to you and let's start this thing rolling. Then we'll move on to the next two huge things that are happening.
Yeah, well, what's interesting, a lot of people when this first rolled out, they're thinking, okay, so we got one bank that had some liquidity issues, but very quickly it became evident that this wasn't limited to just the Silicon Valley Bank, but there was a number of other banks that have liquidity issues. And of course, folks are going to be quick to point to pointing the blame at only maybe entirely at these small regional banks, that they're not balancing their books properly. But really, I think the bigger picture is going to be pointing a massive finger at our own federal government. Really what's going on here is since the year 2020, the government has printed $13 trillion in phony money. They just run the printing presses. They put this money in circulation. It's created a tremendous, practically runaway inflation. And this money was used for COVID. It was used for quantitative
easing.
The quantitative easing. It was used for some infrastructure programs. Now they've got this inflation program or problem, and they're trying to slow the inflation by raising the interest rates aggressively. In fact, if you're looking at the actual percentage from where they started to where they've gone, this is the most massive interest rate hike over a 2-year period that we've ever had in the last 4 or 5 decades. And it's clobbered the bond market. And, the government put these people in a bad place because they were very easy conditions for getting liquidity and for getting loans. And the interest rates were low. It was very attractive. And when you raise the interest rate slowly over 4 or 5 years, the people that are trading the bonds and the regional banks have a lot of time to respond to the market conditions. Well, this was a very aggressive and a very fast rate hike that we've been watching. And it left some of these regional banks like the Silicon Valley Bank with problems on their balance sheet. So, when Silicon Valley Bank on Wednesday morning announced that it needed about $2.5 billion to shore up the balance sheet. And normally this wouldn't have been an issue. The venture capital people would have showed up, they would have invested in the bank, and everyone would have been happy. But by the close of business on Thursday, they had had $42 billion in assets withdrawn, which is about 20% of their total assets. And they ended up selling every available bond that they had at their hands at fire sale prices, and they lost $2 billion, and their stock plummeted by 60%. And now we've seen in the last few weeks, as you pointed out, there's a whole bunch of other regional banks facing the same problem.
Yeah, so there's some very interesting dynamics here too. So the powers that be within Silicon Valley Bank made sure that everybody got their bonuses. And we aren't hearing anything about that. Apparently the day of or the day before, checks were passed out. You're going, okay, what in the world is really going on? They knew they were going down.
That's right.
There's so many different things here. Another dynamic is that bank held money and assets for these tech companies, bio companies in Europe, in China. They held they had some major funds that they were holding that were connected with these Chinese companies, which is interesting. So it's affecting China. Israel is even concerned because of the funding that they were receiving from this bank. So what the bank did is it funded tech startups and bio startups.
Yeah,
And so
right.
it's looking at being a huge problem that will cause these other companies in these other countries to just go belly up. They won't be able to operate. So, I mean, we're watching so many different things. And here's the other thing is the bank is totally sold out on ESGs. They're totally a woke bank. You know, I was reading, I read last night their hiring requirements. I don't know if you were able to see those or not, Lee. Did you see their hiring requirements? I mean,
No, I did not.
They were as woke as you can get. It was just right on through. We're hiring LGBTQ plus. We're hiring based on skin color. We're hiring based upon whether you're a woman or not. It was all this stuff. That became their criteria for who they're going to hire, not about competence. And so you look at this, you go, okay, this is a huge, huge problem because this is how we're hiring in the military. This is what we're doing in Washington, D.C. This is what we're doing in pretty much all these governments, all these schools. Let's bring in the most, let's just hire people based on these things. And you want to know what? People like us have been talking about this for a long time. And this is going to, I mean, imagine 2 years down the road, as we still continue to have this within schools, within the government, and within corporations, because the ESGs are coming with every huge corporation. Imagine the massive collapse that's going to happen because these people are more concerned about having sex with the same sex than they are about actually having good performance with whatever career it is that they're involved in. I mean, and making sure, I mean, you look at the absurdity of this, but this is Romans chapter 1.
That's right.
Suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, God will give them over to a reprobate mind. Romans 1 verse 22, professing to be wise, I'll show them to be insane or fools. We have the insane asylum is running the companies, it's running the schools, it's running the country. And so I think this is, for me, I'm looking at this is the tip of the iceberg, and it's not just about money and an economic collapse. It is about a collapse of the entire system of government and everything here in America. I think, and it's just a matter of time because you cannot run the country, you can't run schools, you can't run companies with when it becomes your criteria, just to hire people even if they're incompetent.